The giant German engine sat in the middle of the brightly lit factory like a defeated giant, surrounded by silent machines and disappointed faces. It had cost over $5 million, brought together the brightest engineers from MIT and Europe, and yet after weeks of endless testing, it refused to run. Every failed attempt pushed the company closer to disaster. Millions were disappearing by the hour, hundreds of jobs hung by a thread, and hope was fading with every sunrise. Then, when everyone believed the impossible machine had won, an unnoticed single father quietly walked through the factory doors carrying nothing but a worn-out toolbox and years of forgotten experience. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Beyond Single Dad. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories every week. The man's name was Adrien Mercer, a 42-year-old maintenance mechanic who had spent most of his life repairing heavy industrial equipment. His work clothes were faded, his boots showed years of hard labor, and exhaustion had become a permanent part of his face. Every morning before sunrise, Adrien prepared breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, braided her hair as best as he could, packed her school lunch, and reminded her that no matter how difficult life became, they would always keep moving forward together. Since losing his wife years earlier to a sudden illness, every responsibility rested on his shoulders. Bills piled up faster than paychecks arrived, but Adrien never complained because his daughter had already lost enough. That particular morning, the company had called every experienced technician they could find. The massive German turbine prototype had become an international embarrassment. Elite engineering teams had examined every circuit, every sensor, every rotating component, and every line of code. Computer simulations predicted perfection, yet reality stubbornly refused to cooperate. Investors threatened lawsuits, executives feared bankruptcy, and employees whispered about layoffs in every hallway. When Adrien arrived, almost nobody noticed him. Some assumed he was only there to clean equipment or replace broken tools. Compared to the brilliant scientists discussing advanced thermodynamics and digital diagnostics, he looked completely out of place. But while everyone focused on complex software and expensive instruments, Adrien quietly observed the machine itself. He listened to every failed startup, watched the slight vibration in the main shaft, and closed his eyes for several seconds each time the engine stopped. Years of experience had taught him something no textbook ever could. Machines often revealed their secrets through sound before they revealed them through numbers. Throughout the afternoon, experts continued replacing expensive components, updating firmware, recalibrating sensors, and reviewing thousands of pages of technical documentation. Nothing changed. Frustration filled the enormous production hall. Some engineers argued over calculations while others blamed manufacturing tolerances. Eventually, one exhausted project manager admitted that there were no more ideas left. The room fell silent. Adrien respectfully asked for permission to inspect the engine alone overnight. Several people exchanged doubtful smiles. A maintenance mechanic solving a problem that some of the world's finest engineers could not seemed almost laughable. But desperation leaves little room for pride. They handed him temporary access and left the building. As darkness settled outside, Adrien remained inside the brightly lit factory. The enormous building echoed with silence as he slowly disassembled inspection panels one by one. Instead of rushing, he patiently examined every bearing, every fuel passage, every cooling channel, and every tiny mechanical connection. Hours passed without interruption. He remembered something his late father had once taught him while repairing old diesel engines on their family farm. The smallest imperfection often hides behind the biggest assumptions. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, Adrien finally discovered it. A microscopic alignment sleeve, manufactured only fractions of a millimeter outside its intended tolerance, expanded differently under operating temperature. Every computer system believed the part was perfect because technically it met production standards. But in real-world operation, that tiny expansion caused an invisible chain reaction that threw the turbine out of synchronization within seconds. It was such a small flaw that sophisticated software ignored it completely, but Adrien's trained ears had recognized its rhythm from the very beginning. Working carefully through the night, he machined a temporary replacement using spare materials found inside the maintenance workshop. He measured everything repeatedly, polished every surface by hand, and reassembled the engine before sunrise. Sweat covered his face, his hands were stained with grease, and exhaustion weighed heavily on his body. Still, before anyone returned, he quietly cleaned every tool and stood beside the silent machine. When executives, engineers, and investors entered the factory that morning, they expected another failure. Adrien simply nodded toward the control panel. The startup sequence began. This time the engine roared to life with perfect balance. The powerful turbine accelerated smoothly, every gauge stabilized, temperatures remained steady, and the massive machine continued operating exactly as originally designed. Nobody spoke. Some engineers stared at their monitors in disbelief while others watched the spinning turbine with tears filling their eyes. Weeks of impossible failure had ended because one overlooked father trusted experience over ego. News spread through the company within hours. Instead of celebrating himself, Adrien asked only one question. He wanted to know whether the employees would still lose their jobs. When management assured him that the successful repair had saved the project and protected hundreds of families, he smiled for the first time in years. That evening, instead of attending interviews or celebrating with executives, Adrien hurried home carrying a small cake. Hazel opened the door with the biggest smile he had seen in months. Together they celebrated not a miracle, but the simple reward of never giving up. The company later offered Adrien a leadership position, a substantial salary increase, and public recognition. Yet what impressed everyone most was not his intelligence but his humility. He reminded every young engineer that degrees open doors, but patience, curiosity, and respect for experience keep those doors open. His story became a lesson repeated throughout the industry, proving that true expertise is measured not by titles but by perseverance, compassion, and the willingness to keep searching long after everyone else has surrendered. If this story reminded you that ordinary people can change extraordinary situations, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Beyond Single Dad. Your support helps these inspiring stories reach people who need hope the most. Sparkle's special request: before this story ends, please comment, "Never give up," if you believe kindness, hard work, and determination will always be stronger than doubt. As Adrien tucked Hazel into bed that night, the world celebrated the men who repaired a $5 million engine, but to one little girl, he had always been something much greater. He was the father who never stopped trying, even when life seemed impossible. And perhaps that was the greatest engine of all, the quiet human heart that refuses to quit, no matter how impossible the challenge becomes.